Live from the Deer and Deer Hunting headquarters here in Iola, Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us for Deer Talk Now. We're back on a weekly schedule. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dan Schmidt along with Brad Rucks. Brad, we're going to talk with Tom Miranda today. We're going to talk about hunting the rut, which is kind of weird because we're stuck in this winter that will never end.
I'm just worried there's going to be deer left for the rut. I mean, this winter's just been brutal. It's been, I don't know how many days we had minus 20 or above or worse. And then with the snow, we were just down in the woods. There's probably a good 24 to 30 inches of snow on the ground inside the woods. And those deer are hungry. I mean, it's sad.
It is bad, especially in the northern areas, the far northern areas. It's stretching down into the middle part of the country. I don't think the winter is going to affect those deer as bad as it does here and north of where we are. We're in the middle of Wisconsin here, and kind of where we meet the big woods. And that's where you see a lot of the real bad effects on winter. We talk about winter severity. We've had, I believe, over 45 days below zero since December, which is bad, which really affects deer. A lot of people think, what should I do? Should I feed the deer? No, you really shouldn't, because at this point in the game, if they haven't had that consistent feed, it's actually going to do more harm than good. But I know that you have a situation on your farm where you have some food plots and farm fields and whatnot that actually are benefiting the deer right now because they've been eating them all winter.
Yeah, we plant, enough destination plots, big plots, 7 to 12 acres that are kind of in the middle of nowhere where it's going to be a great feed source for them. And that food source is starting to get depleted. I mean, it's all turnips, radishes, and purple top turnips is what's in there. Earlier in the year, from all through December and even through January, there's probably 100 deer down there religiously every single night. And Noah counted just the other night, and he said there's 49 of them still coming. But what I notice now is when you drive down the road, the browsing on the pines is just unbelievable. So they're really starting to get in that browse mode.
They're really starting, and when you see them hitting, well, white pine, especially up here, that's almost a preferred food, which is not a good food. And then they start hitting red pine and red spruce and even hitting the other kinds of spruce. Then you know things are bad when they're hitting that, and that's kind of what we have by us. But it's one of those things, Mother Nature dishes out. You don't like to see a bad winter because we lose a lot of fawns. You'll lose some older deer. But hopefully this fall we'll have a few deer left to hunt. And that's what we're going to be talking about this week is Tom Miranda, a legendary bow hunter. I'm sure you've heard of him. You've seen his programs on such networks as ESPN. He's hunted all over the country. We're going to get Tom on the line here in just a few minutes, and we're going to talk about this. I'm excited about it. It's a new book that we published for Tom. It's called The Rut Hunters. This is a copy right here. It's a beautiful book. It's hardcover, 4-color. It's well over 200 pages. But this book is actually a unique work in the fact that Tom, it's not only Tom's tactics, but it's some of the, I mean, if you go through here, and I just mentioned a few of the people, he relies on a lot of people that we know. Don Kiskey's in there, Tim Harold is in there, Larry Weissoon. You're getting some information on hunting the rut all across the country. And what Tom has, as you know, Brad, is he started this Whitetail Slam, and it's basically how to hunt the 8 different subspecies of whitetail. So whether you're hunting in Georgia or Alabama or way up in Canada or way off in Washington and Oregon, there's information here for you as a rut hunter and as a deer hunter. I mean, some really good tactics. Tom is an interesting character in the fact that you had a little bit of trapping experience, Brad, but that's where Tom got his experience, and I think that's what really makes his insights a little bit of cut above some of these other people.
Absolutely. I started here in '93, and I remember Tom Miranda coming to the office and actually meeting with us. And at that time, we were talking about doing some tapes, some tapes of trapping that Tom was going to film for us. I think mink, and it was a whole series, 4 different series. And that's where I got to know Tom. And then he was really one of the first ones to jump onto the big screen with ESPN with his Whitetail show. And it's really, progressed from there. And he's a great guy. I mean, he's just a super nice guy.
Really down to earth.
Well connected. I mean, he's got Stan Potts. A lot of big names are in that book. And they all bring a unique little perspective to their element of whitetail hunting.
Yeah. And if you're curious as to where you can get this book, we actually have a sale today through this week, 20% off. You're going to get $10 off. You're going to get it for $21. It's a great book, hardcover book. But check out shopdeerhunting.com today. We also have deals going on this week. Venison preparation items. We have a bunch of great new products from Weston Products. We have meat grinders and vacuum sealers and all sorts of really cool things that you can get a screaming deal. Just check it out. It's actually part of the President's Day sale from yesterday. They're extending that throughout the whole week. I believe it's 20% off. So if you mentioned that you saw it on Deer Talk Now, you're going to get 20% off of any order, most orders if you check it out. Most of those really cool products. Like I said, there's a grinder, there's vacuum sealers, there's books, there's all sorts of stuff. Just mention you saw it on Deer Talk Now, and you can actually call the toll-free number and make an order too if you don't want to actually purchase online. You can look online, pick out what you want, call the 800 number, and go from there. But let's get Tom on the line, Brad, and let's talk some deer hunting. Hi, Tom.
Yes.
Hi, it's Dan Schmidt and Brad Rucks from Deer and Deer Hunting, Deer Talk Now.
Dan and Brad, how you guys doing?
Very good. Surviving the winter. It just doesn't seem fair that you're down there in Florida and we're up here in the Northwoods.
It's 78 degrees. They're in the clouds in the sky. I'm standing out by the pool at my TV studio. Fountains running. It's all good.
See, that's the
Shorts and
difference.
t-shirt.
That's the difference between you and Dan. We live up here where the deer live, and you live the life in the South.
We got some deer down here. They might not grow a giant rack, but there's plenty of hunting to do. It's all good.
Well, Tom, just to give you some perspective, I had to send one of our guys home right now because my wife got stuck in the driveway because we had 6 inches of snow, and he said, I'll help you out. So we're stuck in the snow. You're sitting by the pool.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I lived in South Dakota for 15 years, so when the wind stops blowing there, all the cows fall down. So I learned pretty quick. There's other places in the world where a guy can have a nice barbecue out when he gets home from his hunt. So that's why I moved down here. Well, that and my wife's from Florida, so she pretty much put the bitch factor on me, and I had to move anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we're jealous on that, Tom. We introed the show today. We're telling the viewers about your new book that you did with F&W. We really love it. It's called The Rut Hunters, and we explained, Tom, not only about the book and all the wisdom that you have from not only yourself and some of these other just tremendous whitetail hunters in there, but one thing I wanted to do to start our conversation today was back up a little bit, because I remember, your background as a trapper and how, you came out and that was kind of what you were. You're a professional trapper for, 30 years or more. And I said there's a lot of probably unique insights that you get as a hunter just from that experience as being a trapper. And I wanted to maybe kick it off and talk and get your opinions on that. If you think that your trapping experience is what made you into the deer hunter that you are today.
Yeah, we can go with that. No problem. I'm ready.
Well, let's start with that. Let's talk about your trapping experience first, and a lot of people might not even be aware of that you actually did that professionally.
Yeah, when I was 11 years old, I had the opportunity to go on a trap line with my next door neighbor, and I had watched him leave early in the morning with a pack basket on and walk down the railroad tracks, and I started following him as, little bratty next door neighbors do, and one thing led to another, and I ended up carrying his backpack, and just fell in love with trapping. It's just the thrill of the catch. It's the excitement of not knowing what you're going to get the next day. It's like Christmas morning. You really don't know what's going to end up in your traps, and I just fell in love with it, and I did it all through grade school and high school, and when my next door neighbor pal found girlfriends, he quit trapping, and I inherited his trap line and bought his traps, and one thing led to another, and I just always enjoyed it, and eventually wanted to be a professional trapper, and moved to Michigan, built a log cabin after high school, and launched a trapping career. My dad wanted me to go to college and be an engineer, but for me, it was the woods and wild places. And I think trappers make the best hunters because of the attention to detail. When you're a trapper, you're looking at tracks and trails, and you're thinking about what the animal's thinking about when he's moving through his habitat. And it's not the obvious signs that a trapper sees. It's the unobvious ones. It's just places like where the grass is parted just slightly, and a mink has went through that area, an animal that has very light and leaves very little sign. And when you start applying it to hunting, especially bow and arrow hunting, you find out real quickly that bow hunters really, that we're trappers, really understand how these deer and how these big game animals move, because they do it a lot like the fur bearers do when you're trapping. And so I think to be a trapper and then to be a hunter is really an advantage for me because of the attention to detail.
That's fascinating insight, and I know what you're saying as far as studying the animals, and I think also too, I did not get my background as a trapper, but my brothers were, and some of their friends were, and my uncles were. What I got from them, now this would have been back in the 1970s, is that attention to detail on scent control, because as a trapper, that's paramount, isn't it?
It's very much paramount with the canines, for sure. Obviously, when you're water trapping, it's not as important. But you learn pretty quick that if you walk in a stream and you set a trap along the bank, you climb up on the bank and set a trap for a fox, make a dirt hole set, and then you get back in the water and you splash water up on the bank where you stood, that your scent goes away and that you have a much better chance of catching a fox in that trap. And I think as you learn and grow in trapping and move from trapping muskrats and raccoons to minks and eventually foxes and coyotes and bobcats, it's a progression that is kind of a natural in trapping. And a lot of people look at trapping as a way to make not just an income, but some people a living. And it's one of the few outdoor sports that you can do legally and make money off of wildlife. And it's a catalyst, I think, and it was one of the catalysts for me growing up. I mean, when I was a kid, I would have to mow, 3 yards a week in the summer, and I'd only make like $15, $5 a yard back in those days, and I could catch one raccoon and make $20. So in the course of a week of trapping in the fall, I could make as much as I did in the whole summer mowing grass, and it was a lot harder to mow the grass in my mind because every time I checked my traps, it was like being in the Yukon, and it was just everything was in your mind of what you wanted it to be. And my parents were real lenient with me as well, which allowed me to check my traps before school, skin my catch after school, set new traps that evening, and it took that. It took that kind of time to be able to be successful at it, and I was very, very fortunate to have lenient parents that saw a value in me being a trapper entrepreneur, if you will. And so it's all the planets lined up for me when it came to trapping, and my roots are still trapping, and I've been doing TV shows for 30 years and bow hunting all over the planet. But I still think like a trapper. I still feel like I'm a trapper. I love trapping. I love trappers. And trapping is my roots.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, let's talk about where you are today, Tom, because we know we followed your path. You've had all the great shows on ESPN and elsewhere. But now you have a new thing going. It's called the Whitetail Slam. That's what started with where this book came from. Tell us about the Whitetail Slam, how that came to be, and a little bit about the Rut Hunters book.
Yeah. I started doing a lot of adventure hunts for ESPN back in the pretty much mid-'90s. And about 1998, I started doing other species besides deer and turkey and elk. And one thing led to another. And within 5 or 6 years, I suddenly started to realize that, gosh, I had like 12 species of big game animals. And the Super Slam was 27 at that time, 27 animals. And so I kind of went after, and I had all my hunts on video. And so kind of had a personal goal that I didn't tell anybody about, that I was going to try to get all 27 North American animals on video. Well, there were different animals that were added in the mid-2000s and later 2000s to make it 29 species eventually. But in May 2011, I shot a desert sheep in Mexico to be the first bow hunter to shoot all 29 North American big game animals with a bow on video. And when I was doing those hunts, especially the deer, I started realizing that, a super slam of animals, of big game animals, is a collection of slams. It's all the moose in North America. It's all the sheep. It's all the deer, the caribou, the elk, the bears. And I started thinking, why isn't there a slam for whitetails? Where's a whitetail slam? I can't believe the number one animal in North America doesn't have its own slam. And I started doing a little studying and found out that the SCI Club has a grand slam of whitetails that includes like 11 different groups of whitetails. And there's actually about 33 subspecies of whitetails in North America and Central America. And so what I started finding out that there was a lot of biologists that really couldn't decide how many subspecies there were, so no one really knew how to go about really defining what a whitetail slam would be, and so nobody ever did it. And so I got together with Dr. James Kroll from Texas, a biologist who's very well versed in whitetails, another Dr. Harry Jacobson, who's another whitetail biologist. I also talked to Brian Murphy from the Quality Deer Management and Kip Adams from Quality Deer Management Association. And I got all four of those guys together, and I said, let's look at the subspecies of whitetails, and let's come up with some subgroups that we can bracket these deer into, and come up with some universal acceptance of where these deer are and why they're different, so that we could come up with a slam. And they came up with 8 different subgroups across the country, and it's based on the rut times. It's based on some of the transplanting that was done. It's based on a lot of factors, but there's 8 different subgroups that were defined by them, and they've made a special map that includes all the counties in every state and province where these deer live. And I started a whitetail slam, and 4 whitetails, one from any 4 of the subgroup areas, would be a slam, and if somebody were to get all 8, they would have the ultimate whitetail slam. And kind of started a club with it. It's a free club. You can join just by going online and putting your name and an email address in, and we have giveaways every week. And if a guy shoots a deer and wants to put it on his slam page, he can do it for free. And if he wants to go for the slam, he can certify that buck. And if you certify 4 bucks from 4 different areas, you earn a slam and you get a certificate for it. And it's really been doing well. I mean, there's not a lot of guys that travel a lot and hunt. You know, you find a lot of guys that might have 10 or 12 or 20 bucks shot in their home state, but guys that go to another subgroup area, which if you live in Ohio, you've got to drive a couple of states over to get to the next subgroup. And if you live out in Arizona where there's cows deer, you've got to drive farther to get to another subgroup. So you have to actually travel and hunt. And that makes it difficult, because these deer are difficult to hunt in some of the areas that they live. And if you're a Midwest hunter and you used to hunt in the same tree stand or the same 5 tree stands every year and killing your deer, to travel to some of these other areas like Florida or Texas or Arizona or some of these other areas, whitetails are difficult to hunt.
Yeah, Tom, as you were talking there, I was trying to show, I know in the book you actually have these maps, which I think is really cool, of the different subgroups, and it's broken out that way. What I think is really neat about it is somebody can buy this book, and it's not, I think a lot of the criticism a lot of times is when somebody writes a book is that, well, that's mostly geared towards where that guy lives. While this is actually geared towards whether you're hunting in Florida or Georgia, somewhere in the southeast, or Texas, or Wisconsin or Michigan or Pennsylvania or even Oregon or Washington. And I think that's what's really unique about this book, is that you're providing, like I said, wisdom for somebody who's hunting a whitetail, no matter where that whitetail might be.
Exactly. And the other thing was that I've hunted in a lot of places for whitetails, and so I have some experience in some of these areas, but there's no better person to talk about strategies for a different subgroup than somebody who actually lives in that subgroup area. And having been a TV producer and on television bow hunting for 30 years, I have a lot of friends, a lot of bow hunting friends, a lot of guys who live in some of these areas. And so it was pretty easy for me to send out a few emails, make a few phone calls, and get guys like Eddie Claypool, and Tony Peterson and Bill Winke, Don and Candy Kiske, Mark Wimpy, other guys that are good pals of mine that live in some of these areas and have their own strategies and tactics for hunting these deer. And I thought, it's not just my way. There's other people that know way more about it than me, so let's include some of their tactics. And the book has almost 30 different hunters' tactics in it in these different areas. And so it's really a broad paintbrush of ideas, strategies, and tactics for hunting whitetails in and across the entire continent.
That's great. Oh, now we could probably talk to you all day, Tom. We know you're on a tight schedule, but we wanted to get, I picked out 3 questions from, we have a Gmail account where people have been sending questions for Deer Talk. And I'm going to start, I'm going to give you the first one, and then Brad's going to give you one, and I'll give you the last one. The first one's an easy one. I can't remember the name of the fellow who asked it, but he wanted you to describe your first successful bow hunt for a deer, when that happened, and what were some of the circumstances behind it.
Well, I was 14 years old, you know, and it was a doe, and it's one of these hunts where, you know, you've been for 2 years and you haven't gotten a chance, or if you've had a deer in range, you've blown it for whatever reason. And I was a young kid. I did more trapping early than bow hunting, but and I wasn't doing it for any other reason than just to say that I was able to get a deer with a bow. And back then, you know, you're talking about the early 70s. Bow hunting wasn't near as popular as it is now, and the technology hadn't gained as much popularity, and the equipment wasn't near what it is today. So it was exciting. It was in Ohio, and where I grew up in central Ohio, and my grandparents lived down by Old Man's Cave in Hocking County, and that's where I got to do a lot of my very first hunting with a bow and for whitetail. So it was very exciting.
What kind of equipment were you using? Was it? I'm assuming it was a recurve.
Yeah, it was a bear, black bear
Wow.
bow.
It always amazes me. You can remember, you know, the exact. I was using a Bear Whitetail Hunter. It was bought from Shopko of no place. It started $79. You just remember.
You remember all that stuff,
yeah.
don't you?
Yeah. I got a question for you, Tom. The next question is, in your opinion, what whitetail, what region of the country do you feel that whitetail is the hardest to hunt?
Well, I would say the desert cow's deer would probably be recognized as one of the hardest animals to hunt with a bow and arrow. Now that we use a lot of trail cameras on water holes and we use ground blinds, and the ground blinds, especially the pop-ups, are more effective, I think it's a lot easier than it used to be 10 years ago when everybody was trying to spot and stalk those deer. But that doesn't take away anything from the deer that are found in the southeast and the real heavy forested areas, or the Gulf Coast deer or the Florida Seminole deer that are just living really in a serious jungle. A deer that you don't see come out until last light, and they don't come out during the day. Hunting in the southeast, you've got a lot of bugs early season when a lot of guys, you know, are shooting their bucks over soybean fields on the first day of the hunt, you know, in Iowa or Kentucky or places like that. So, I mean, I would think the desert cow's deer would probably be the hardest because you got to really travel. Most people that are whitetail hunters have to travel a long way for an opportunity to hunt one. But I would also say that they're probably just as they're probably about the same as far as difficulty as the deer that are found in the southeast that live in the forested area. So maybe it's a cop-out answer, but there's a lot of tough deer hunting out there. For somebody who's shot all 29 big game animals with a bow, I can tell you that going on a grizzly hunt or hunting polar bears or hunting elk in California are tough hunts, but sometimes the most frustrating hunts I've ever done are often whitetail hunts where you know the animal's there, but you just don't see them when you're in the stand, and you just don't seem like it's like they have a sixth sense and they just don't come out. Whereas when you go on these other hunts, you go find the animal and you stalk it and you get it. And with deer hunting, it's not like that.
Tom, I've heard that a lot from other hunters, you know, that I deal with the magazine with DDH. Patrick Martin is a big cows deer hunter. Why is that particular whitetail? What is it about that whitetail? Is it just the way they're strung biologically, or is it something else?
Well, one of the unique things about the desert cow's deer is that they are the purest strain of whitetail we have because so much transplanting was done over the years. A lot of the other subgroups and subspecies have been intermixed with other deer, whereas the cow's deer kind of stand on their own. There's miles and miles of no whitetail habitat before you get to the cow's deer habitat area, so they've got that buffer cushion. But that really has nothing to do with how hard they are to hunt. I think it's just the fact that they're preyed upon by so many animals because of where they live. I mean, they live in a very, very harsh desert environment. We have a lot of mountain lions down there. They're very small. They're small. I mean, besides the Florida Keys deer, they're the smallest whitetail you can hunt. I mean, you can't hunt the Keys deer, but they're the smallest whitetail the desert cows deer are, and they're preyed upon by a lot of things. So they're very, very shy and they're very spooky. And since they're desert animals, they don't have to drink a lot, and their color is such that they really blend well in the desert. And so a lot of times you can get on a ridge and glass and glass and glass, and you can see the white mule deer butts all day long, and you can see desert sheep, but you just don't see any cow steer. It's like they just vanish, and they're like gray ghosts, and that makes them difficult because they're hard to find. And of course, a lot of hunters from the east, they're so small they misjudge them because they're like a pony. If you see it like a horse and you see a pony, the pony looks exactly like the horse but in miniature. And a desert cow's deer is just like that. So you see a desert cow's deer at 20 yards, and it's, as a bow hunter, especially if he surprises you, you go to full draw and you shoot, and you shoot right over him because he's a lot closer than you think because he's so small. You know what I mean? You think it's a normal sized deer. So a lot of cow's deer get missed, and or they jump the string, and so they're just a difficult animal to hunt with a bow. Rifle hunters don't have a lot of problem if you find them to shoot them, but bow hunters, it's a totally different game.
Cool. All right, well, the last question we're going to throw to you, Tom, I think is an obvious one, so we might have to tweak this. But the viewer is asking, what is your favorite place to hunt whitetails if you only had to pick one?
Wow, it'd be the Midwest. I'll tell you, I've had some awesome hunts in Kansas. My home state, where I grew up in Ohio, has just been shooting some whopper deer. Had one of the most exciting hunts I ever did in Illinois. So it'd be one of those three states. I think some of the most exciting rut hunting I've ever been around has been in Kansas. The most exciting rattling action has been in Kansas. It's a different kind of deer totally than what you find in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Michigan. It's a deer that's a little lighter in coat, a little bit bigger bodied, and very aggressive to the horns. I mean, you rattle in Ohio, you see nothing, or very few times you get success. You rattle in Kansas at the right time, and you might have 5 bucks around you. And the other thing is in Kansas, it's a prairie state, so there's lots of open ground there. It looked like there wouldn't be a lot of whitetails, but you get in some of those brushy river bottoms and places where these deer have this cover, and it's amazing to see the trails. It's almost like beaver runs that go along these creeks that just dew claws and tracks of big bucks that are cruising in that early November rut season. And when you rattle the horns together, you can actually see a buck run across a 400-acre field right to your tree belt. It's pretty exciting hunting.
Hey, Tom, I got one more question, and I don't know why I never asked you this. I know you're a bow hunter, tried and true. I mean, when did you give up the firearm stuff?
I've shot 3 animals with a rifle in my whole life.
Really?
That would be big game animals. And I was actually hosting a show for Cabela's on ESPN back in those days when they actually made me use a rifle. I mean, I've done a lot of shotgunning and bird hunting and things like that with shotgun, but when it came to rifle hunting, of course that doesn't count coyotes. When I was a government trapper, I shot a lot of coyotes with a rifle, but when it comes to big game hunting, I've only shot 3 animals with a rifle my whole life. So I'm a bow hunter, tried and true. It's like being a trapper. I mean, at the end of the day, I love trapping. I'm a gadget guy, and if you're a bow hunter, you're pretty much a gadget guy because we got to have our quiver and our release and our arrows and broadheads and da 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 da. And it's just something that gets in your blood. And I can relate one quick story. I did a hunt for Dall sheep in the Northwest Territories, and we were after a big ram for 4 days and just couldn't get on him with a bow, and I was definitely not going to use a rifle, and I ended up getting into another batch of sheep and shooting a real nice ram, but not a big one. And I had a buddy coming up to hunt with a gun, and he wanted us to scout. And he ended up coming into camp after I killed my ram, and we told him, man, we got a really big one staked out for you. You know, I tried to get on him for 4 days, and I couldn't get it close enough. They'd always see us or spook or whatever. And he sighted in his rifle. We went up the mountain, and within 4 hours of his first day of the hunt, he shot this giant ram with his rifle, and I was standing behind him when he shot it. And I knew right then that it just wasn't hard enough for me. It was all the work that I had put into hunting that Dall sheep with a bow, and the enjoyment and the exhilaration and just the feeling of accomplishment I got when I finally arrowed him and got him. Even though mine was a lot smaller than this guy's ram, I just knew that the rifle hunting wasn't for me, and that was just proof in the pudding.
Oh, that's a cool story.
That's
That's a
a
really cool story. Well, Tom, we want to thank you for joining us today. We know you're busy, and I think you're actually heading off to go hunting somewhere, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to New Zealand on a tar hunt. I'm going after a lot of the mountain animals of the world now. When you finish the slam, it's like, well, what else is there? And so, yeah, I'm doing more. I've shot 3 ibex so far. I've shot a chamois. I got an aoudad last year in Texas, a free-range aoudad with my bow. So, yeah, I'm going on a tar hunt in New Zealand. They're a mountain goat that was transplanted from the Himalayas in New Zealand way back in the early 1900s. And yeah, they're considered vermin there. You don't even need a hunting license to go. But they're a very challenging hunt. They live in real steep country. It's a lot of heavy climbing and a lot of glassing and a lot of stalking, but there's a lot of them there. So it should be a fun hunt, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's opposite seasons down there, and actually right now it's tomorrow in New Zealand, so that's pretty crazy.
Awesome.
Well, good luck to you, and leave your door open. Dan and I might come and use the pool, okay?
No worries, dude. Come on down. I got a lot of room.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for thanking me. Have a great day.
Yep, you
Take
too.
care, boys. Cheers.
Awesome guy, Brad. Awesome hunter. The cool thing about Tom is he worked his way up. You can tell that this guy, it's in his blood. And what's really cool is I'm glad you asked him that question because I didn't know that.
I didn't either. I knew he's a bow hunter, tried and true. And growing up in the Midwest or even Ohio, where he said South Dakota, I mean, those are rifle. Well, South Dakota's a big rifle state. Ohio's a big shotgun state. So I was just curious. And if you look at our background, I mean, I was a rifle hunting fool when I was 12 years old. I mean, we just lived and died.
Absolutely. It's just different ways you were brought up. And he didn't have, and growing up in the early 70s there, I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of gun hunting opportunities, but he just kind of took to that whole trapping thing. And then when he got into bow hunting, it was off from there. Yeah. That's cool. Well, that's the show for today. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Remind you again, one thing I'm going to mention first, here's the new book. 20% off. Get it for, I think it's $21. It's just a great deal, just over $20. It's a hardcover book, 4-color. Tom Miranda's The Rut Hunters, on sale today and always at shopdeerhunting.com. The other book Tom has that we should have mentioned is Adventure Bow Hunter. He did that one about a year and a half ago with us, and that's about some of these adventures of these
his
different
slam,
his slam
that he has on video. So
and QR codes in that book for all the hunts, so you can actually watch all the videos, all the hunts as they took place.
Yeah, and he's very humble about that. I know they all weren't, record book size Boone and Crockett class animals, but I mean, most of them were pretty darn nice.
You look at them, you're like, wow, that would be really cool to hunt whatever kind of animal that that particular chapter is about.
The other thing that people don't realize about Tom is how dedicated he was. That last sheep that he had to get, the desert one, I think he went on 4 different hunts to kill that thing, and he had passed up multiple rams, to get a shot at this one. So it's a great story.
If you want to become a better bow hunter, read anything he's got in either one of these books. So that's it for this week. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. For Brad Rucks, I'm Dan Schmidt. Thanks for joining us on Deer Talk Now.